Which one? I don't know because we've both done intros for the Nolan retro. So now you know what? You go, sir. You go.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Geek First podcast. I don't know what episode number this is, but this is our review of Tenet. I am the Adam Hartcaster, Dylan Musk, and I'm joined by two very special gentlemen. I don't know if they have nicknames, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
I got a nickname.
What are they?
We're in spoilers mode now. I'll just say I don't know. I'm the number one Robert Pattinson fanboy Trask now.
Didn't you use
that on a spoiler?
Spoilers review?
What? No, I said I'm the Christopher Nolan one. I was the number one Christopher Nolan fan. Hurry, Taylor. We don't have time.
I'm the pincer movement, Taylor Field.
Oh, very
nice. I like that one a lot. Yeah, so if you're just joining us today, there's a lot going on. We did the entire retrospective of all of Nolan's movies. A couple exceptions there, but for the most part, you can check out the feed. All that's on there. This is going to be a strictly spoilers review. Normally, we do a non-spoiler section and then the spoiler section. But since this movie isn't really releasing everywhere, releasing at different times, we just decided to separate them. So these two gentlemen, Travis and Taylor, did a non-spoiler review that's about half an hour long that you can check out on the feeds now. And then this is going to be all out spoilers. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to plug for today.
No, other than we'll be dropping New Mutants. Any Marvel fans of that? And then, yeah, all I would say is, I don't know, we have not talked about when, but sometimes in the near future, we'll be doing some sort of stream for Marvel Avengers, so that comes out next week. So just subscribe to our Twitter and Facebook, follow us there, and then we'll let you know. So the only thing I want to ask you, Dylan, have you listened to our non-spoilers?
I did, yep.
Okay, so you have. So I want to know how you feel about this movie, because you know how we feel about this movie, so.
I do, and it's funny because when I was listening to it, like you guys sounded pretty similar on like most things, but then when it came to like the number rating, you guys were different by like a factor of 3 numbers.
Well, that's subjectual.
Like number rating.
My number rating, as I said in that cast, it's gonna change. I know it's gonna go higher after.
But even then, like the music score, I said was 100%. He said it was 50-50.
No, but I re-listened to some tracks while I was at work today, and like now that I could not have to like focus on dialogue, I enjoy that.
So what did you think, Dylan?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar to you guys. If not, I'm going to be even a bit lower, honestly. Right after the movie, I was just considering it so much, and the more I've thought about it today, I think I've realized kind of how disappointed I am. I love the concept, but I feel like I could say that about any one of Nolan's movies. And I always compliment what he does with time, because I think that's just such an interesting theme that he tackles. And I feel like if you look at, he probably has this big notebook with all these movie ideas, right? And I feel like there's a whole chapter that's dedicated just to things with time. It's like time we've done that. Let's do dreams that have weird timescape.
He has 5 more time movies coming. You know it.
Yeah, exactly. But I just don't think this was the best idea. Like, it sounds cool on paper, but I think it should have stayed in that notebook. It's just, I don't know if like, I don't get a lot of this movie, and part of that is probably a user error, me not understanding, but I also feel like the movie did not do a good job of holding my hand along the way. I don't understand a lot, and it's not to the point where Inception confused me when I first saw it. I understood enough of it, but I was like, okay, I got to go back and see it again because I need to figure out these particular things. I don't even know what I'd look for in a second watch of this movie. I will watch it again at some point, but overall, I think I am pretty disappointed, and I don't think there's really many points, many story beats that really landed with much impact for me. There was kind of one moment that I thought was quite good, but other than that, I didn't feel too attached to any characters, that kind of thing. I'd say on like the technical front, it's Christopher Nolan, it's stellar, great cinematography. I like the music. I think the balance is sometimes really whack. I couldn't hear a lot of dialogue.
Really off, yeah.
But special effects, obviously he does a lot of practical effects, especially that plane scene, which I really appreciate. I thought all the acting was good. And I guess it kind of ends there in terms of the technicals. I actually thought the writing was not that great in this movie. I thought the main character wasn't, and his name is protagonist, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't think the protagonist was very well done at all. I didn't feel that attached to him. So yeah, overall, I think I'm a bit disappointed. And obviously, a rewatch, I'm sure will solve some maybe questions I have. But on the first watch, I was not too happy with the result, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I didn't like it as least as I did Interstellar, but Interstellar I still felt like it had that feeling of, I was like, okay, when I watch this again, I might like it a little bit more. And I feel that way with Tenet, but I don't think I'm going to like it like bounds by more. You know, like
Mhm.
there's sometimes where I go, oh, I had these problems because I didn't understand. You need to see it again, like you said with Inception. Not even problems, but just like questions. Where there's still like structural things that I don't like. Like I just want to start with, because I said this in the non-spoilers about the villain. I really liked him at the beginning because he was like really cold and cool and calm, collected. I like his dialogue, but I felt like he took a big shift when, and I didn't like the editing of it when he brought her to that room and he was like beating her up and everything. One, like I think because Nolan always tries to keep his movies PG-13, just like the editing of that scene, like they were trying to make it look like he was hitting her, but he wasn't. It looked like it was really choppy. But then just him going on about being a fucking tiger and just like it didn't feel like that didn't feel like a Nolan movie. And that's where I said like some of the strengths of being like a Bond movie are there, but some of the strengths as far as the other thing I was disappointed. Like the big reveal of what Tenet's gonna do or what he's gonna do is like he's just gonna end the world, and I was like, oh, I expected a bit more from Christopher Nolan, to be honest. Then when they're just like, well, he's gonna end the world, I went, okay, like this is just a Bond movie now. I thought it'd be a little bit more than that, but that's where I still really enjoy it. But I have some disappointing faults that will never change on a second viewing.
Yeah, and I actually think a part of that too is just the way they set it up. They set it up so that the villain needs like these 9 Horcruxes essentially. Like he needs these 9 things, and then when he has all of them, he can blow up the world. But then it's like, oh, but he already has 8 of them, guys. Get stoked! He's getting the last one. And it's supposed to add suspense, but it just felt really weak. Like that felt like screenwriter's first time on the job or something. That didn't feel like a Christopher Nolan thing. It just seemed a bit lazy to me.
Well, I think that's even just my problem with the very beginning of the movie. I feel like the first 30 minutes we're dropped in a world that we don't know, and that's where it's like if you look at the beginning of this movie versus the beginning of Inception, that happens, but then slowly they peel back this is what's going on. Where I feel like one with Tenet, they do that a lot slower, and two, my problem is they throw a lot at you. Like every time John Day Washington meets a new character, there's tons of exposition and they're talking about so many different characters. Like when we meet Michael Caine, he goes on like 2 different rants about like this person is the Duchess' sister whose cousin is this. It's like I don't need to know all these details, but they're just because when it's Nolan, you think I need to know them all because it's all going to be important, but sometimes they're not. It's just little character details that I didn't think really fleshed them out too much. So
yeah, I agree with that. I feel like there was some potential villains that were like set up in the opening of the movie that you never really hear from again. And then I didn't even really feel like what is the guy's name? I'm gonna try and find it quick. The main villain.
Kenneth Branagh. I don't know the villain's name, but yeah, the guy he directed Thor and he was in
Andre Satai
or something like that.
Well, I almost thought they said Saito, and I was like, "Is this connected?"
Too.
Yeah, I'm like, "Is this actually like?" For 5 minutes, like, "Oh, this is the big twist. It is connected to Inception." And I was getting really excited, and then it's like, "Oh no, this guy just has the same name." But
it's Saito with an R at the end.
Okay, yeah. Taylor, another one. Spoilers. Is there something you want to shout out as far as we're talking about? I guess cons right now, but anything in particular that you wanted to really get off your chest from last night?
Yeah, one thing in particular. So this is kind of like a con, and I told you this offcast yesterday. So at the intro of the film, I had thought they would retouch upon the fact that when the protagonist encounters that first inverted person, the inverted gunshot goes back, and then I thought they would touch upon that later on. But all that's clarified with that is the woman says, "You're lucky you didn't take an inverted bullet or whatever." And I thought, well, that's really all they're leaving. I thought they would fall back to the intro because the beginning had that. It also had him knowing exactly where to go to find one of the devices for the destruction of the world, one of the pieces of the Horcrux. So I don't understand what was his, because as I told you, there were 4 teams that were involved in that opera house. There were the terrorists, there was the Tenet man, doing gunshots. There was the protagonist, part of his undercover team. And then there was the main SWAT team that was in there that was, I guess, popping bombs off putting bombs. There were so many teams, so I don't know what the goal was. Yeah. And apparently, I think Saiter, from what I read afterwards, I think he was a part of that and somehow, but we don't learn that he is.
Well, he was though because remember that's how they meet. He brings up the opera, so that's how we learn he is connected to that somehow.
But I don't remember him being in the opera scene.
Well, no, I think he's just the guy that is the head. he's organizing it. It's his. So whoever some bad guys are, they're his bad guys. So that's what I think
Right.
it is that he's the Red Skull to the Hydra, saying, "Go
Okay.
do this." So that's what I
Yeah.
think they're supposed to do.
Okay, then that's one of my cons is they don't cover how the protagonist knew to find one of the devices hanging in that coat rack of 1,000 coats. So why was he looking for it when he
No,
wasn't
they
a part
cover
of
that
Tenet yet?
part. That guy that they go to save, he tells them the number of the coat rats. I'm the same thing with you. I don't know what happened to that inverted guy who almost shot him. Maybe it was just that one was just by luck that there was another inverted person doing something else not involved with him, which is, because everything else after that point is shown like, oh, it was Robert Pattinson or him the whole time, right? But I think the code check was that guy, whoever their mole was, he did tell them the number and where to go.
So he was a part of
Yeah.
the inverted
Yeah.
Tenet thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was something that was kind of just confusing to me across the movie. Like I didn't really know who we were up against or like who was on what faction. Like particularly the end of the movie when we're at like that kind of quarry area, like the sandy, like the last
Yeah.
final big battle. I have no idea what was going on there. Like who were
No.
they against? I didn't see like there's the one like Russian dude who ends up going down and he's like going to the container that has all the Horcruxes. But other than that, I didn't see a single like quote unquote bad guy. I had no idea who they were fighting. I didn't know if they were like if it was supposed to be that red team versus the blue team, which wouldn't make any sense. So I just had no idea what they were blowing up, who they were shooting at. It didn't really make any sense to me. Did you guys see that scene differently than me?
I took it. I don't think it's explained well. I think that's where it's like James Bondy as far as these are just goons. But I took it as Kenneth Saito's. These are a bunch of goons he's hired to protect his investment in this vault. That's all.
Yeah.
That the movie didn't really tell me that, but I just assumed
They
from
all
like
just look
action.
the same. I think is a big
Oh,
problem.
oh
with
yeah,
it,
they all
too.
had the
I
exact.
couldn't
Everybody
tell.
had the exact same attire in this movie. The red, the blue, and then the like. It was like the white blue camo instead. But that's what I took them as. They were just goons that were there hired to protect it. To die for anything. Which that's a scene that I
Yeah.
love. Like cinematically, but that's a scene where I need the 4 YouTube videos showing me all the different timelines at the same time because I thought it was a cool effect, but there was a time where like the building blew up 3 times. I was kind of like, I was getting a little lost. I was like, I'm trying to place like, okay, who shot first? How do they do this? Like, it just feels at some points, and I'm sure there's a way it's going to be broken down, but it was just like so much time travel on time travel on time travel. I was lost where I feel like the Inception, the dream within a dream within a dream, that can get convoluted and confusing, but eventually it works in your head. And they did that good thing in that where they'd show, like we talked about that, where it shows all like the montages of people getting ready for the kicks or something slowed down. Where this, I don't feel that's the same way with exposition. I feel like it was not, it could have taken a little, like another once over, like how could we make this a bit tighter or how could we make this a bit clear? And I feel like that's what this movie, one of the things it was missing was for that stuff to be clear.
Yeah, well, I think the Inception comparison is a bit different because at least when you're in those scenes where it's cut in between everyone getting pumped up with a kick, you know who they all are at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, like even Robert Pattinson, he's like you know a lot about him, but still there's this like essence of mystery to him that isn't revealed until like literally the last scene, and then he's gone, and then it's something else. And that's kind of the case for like everyone, even your main character, the protagonist. You learn at the end, he did like so much more that is never really on screen that kind of felt like a half-assed ending to me. I have like a few questions. I don't know if I kind of want to throw them at you guys and see if you have answers just so I can help understand a little bit more of this.
Yeah, my only thing I'll touch on the protagonist before we go, because that was a con of mine I couldn't say last night, that to me, that was my thing of when we did the Inception retro and I read that quote about how when Leo and Nolan met, Leo like sat down with Nolan and Nolan said that he really attributed him for making it more of a character story than a plot story. It was less about the world and it was more about Cobb trying to achieve this goal. That's what I feel like this, and there's differences, but I feel like Inception could have been out that without that. Maybe that story is not that real. Maybe it's a little heightened, but that's what that feel like, where the protagonist is just the protagonist and there's not much to him. I like the acting. I think he did a good job. He has I like the like comedic stuff he had in the restaurant of, I'll take that to go and stuff like that.
Oh,
like,
really?
He didn't? No, see, I liked all that stuff.
To me, he was just like way too dad jokey. It felt like, I don't know, none of it just felt like very like cliche, like kind of generic dialogue for me.
Yeah, but yeah, that was my thing of like his connection was her, and then again, that's another Bond trope. He falls in love right away, but I didn't connect. I think Elizabeth Debicki's like the heart of this film, and that works, but I just feel that every other lead, for the most part in old movies, even Prestige, when it's like these guys are awful, but they're really driven by something, he's just driven by like, oh, I got to save the country, which works. That's fine. But I guess I was always expecting more because I always feel his protagonists do have a little bit more. There's that little emp to get me personally invested. And I didn't find that with this guy, where that's why with Pattinson, like you said, he is mysterious. But then when I learned about everything he did at the end, that does excite me to watch again, to feel like, okay, because clearly, like when they have that meeting at the beginning and he's like, oh, you'll take a Diet Coke. And he's like, I don't like Diet Coke. He's like, yes, you do. So to find more little things like that, I think will be fun. So that's why Pattinson's character, I made the comparison in Inception where Arthur was the cool one and Dom had the character like personality. It's weird that the main character was the cool, like trying to be the cool one, and the side character was the guy that had a bit more emotionality to it. So that's why I didn't connect with the main guy, even though I liked all the acting.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm already forgetting her name, Debicki's character, Kat. I'm kind of like I kind of feel like she was the only one that I knew who she was from start to finish.
Yeah,
and like I actually know like her character backstory, and I mean it's like she's a simple character, so it makes sense. But I kind of feel like she was the only one that I really understand at this point. Who I didn't feel like there was scenes missing that would have helped me fill in some blanks or something.
Even though, before your questions, do you feel, because Emily explained a bit more to me last night, so I do understand it more, but I feel like the husband and that whole painting was one of the most convoluted things ever.
I don't understand. That was my first question. What is that painting? I don't get it. I don't get it.
So I guess Emily broke it down to me that like she thought it was real, so she told her husband, he bought it, they found it was a fake, and to like hold it over her head, he would reveal that it would be fake, so it would like ruin her entire career if people found out it was fake. But then she wished that she found out it was fake because she could have like used it to betray him and make him look bad or something like that. My whole thing is, this guy's a weapons dealer. All he need to just say is like, you're going to stick with me or I'm going to kill you. That's it. That character in this villain, he's not that leveled of a thing. That's why I love Kenneth Branagh gave some interview. He's like, well, I guess I'm the villain in the movie. It's like, you so are. You're not like a Thanos. You don't have that redeeming qualities. He just wants to end the world because he's selfish. Other than he says like, oh, the people in the future have told me we ruined the planet, but they've posed that, oh, we could change the future, so that could change. So to me, he's already a really bad character. To give this whole painting thing, I thought was one of the most convoluted things I've seen in a movie for a long time.
Well, so, I guess my question along with that then is, like, they do that whole heist just to get that painting. Like, why do they do that? Why does that have to happen?
So she won't introduce the protagonist without knowing she's safe. So if they get the painting, she's
but isn't
safe.
that like the most overcomplicated plan of all time? The only way you can possibly build trust with this woman is to like do this crazy heist that you might die for. Like, I don't know. That just seems a little bit too much to me.
It was like two birds with one stone, though, because the painting was obviously this little like side story that they pursued, but it was really to introduce the fact that there is another like inverted machine, right? That would play a part in later.
Yeah, yeah, for a storytelling reason, that's what I don't think it makes sense story, but for Nolan to be like, we got to put this machine here so they could do the switch later on in the movie, I guess so. But from a story standpoint, it also sucks because later on, Kenneth Branagh was like, here, I have the painting. Yeah. And nothing happened. Like, there's no consequences for her. Yeah. He knows, well, he at least insinuates that he knows she tried to get this painting stolen. He doesn't punish her. Like, he goes to, obviously, to beat her up and everything like that. But he makes it sound like if she tries to get this painting, he's going to kill her. That doesn't happen. So, I don't mind the heist thing because I feel like that's kind of a heist trope of like, okay, you got to pull off this really thing because she's, I guess, the only way he can get to Kenneth Branagh, right? There's no other way for the protagonist to get to her. So they have to do this painting. Do I think it was the most well done? No, I don't. But I get what they're going for.
Yeah. Here's another question for you. So when protagonist meets Kat and Sato, or like when he's kind of built some trust with them, I guess, they decide to go on like these flying boat things, which are like cool looking. Yeah. But like what is the purpose of that boat scene? I couldn't hear like anything they were saying because it was so loud.
Well, they were just talking business, right?
Yeah, but like I don't know. Isn't that also not just like super overcomplicated for no reason?
So again, I sound like a do
or die thing. We need to go on this boat like right now.
I sound like
like that's the worst place ever to have a conversation, especially with someone that you don't trust at all in an environment where he did get knocked off the boat and he would not have been saved. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, even for me, the protagonist multiple times has his back fully turned to Kenneth Branagh, so it's like he could just take you out in a split second. So again, I sound like a broken record, but that is a Bond trope where Bond will meet the girl, she meets like the evil businessman, and then they go on some like expedition together. And Bond is like sometimes skiing or like a game of poker, like you'll see in even Casino Royale. So I think that's what he was trying to do. But yeah, that scene, and when he learned about Tenet, I'm like, why do we need to put these on boats? I heard a few lines in that discussion, and that was it. I didn't hear what she said before she knocked her husband off. I didn't hear, because he literally says like, what do you need with the plutonium, or what was it,
Plutonium.
Plutonium?
Plutonium.
Plutonium, yeah.
Or whatever.
He's like, what do you want with the plutonium? And then John Nixon tells him, but I didn't hear a single thing of what he wanted to do with it because it was so loud. I just couldn't understand. This is a movie that I think I will at least like better when I have subtitles. But yeah, I don't know why he's been obsessed with it since Dark Knight Rises, but the sound mixing in some of his movies, someone needs to tell him that I get what he's going for, but it hurts the actual movie, in my opinion, on a first viewing at least.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. What did you feel kind of the same on that particular boat scene, Taylor?
I of all the scenes, like I feel like that definitely the audio wasn't super loud at that moment for me, because like when I couldn't understand what they were saying before, when they put the headphones on, I was like, okay, I can kind of hear now, so that works. But I love the scene. I thought it was super cool. I just kind of rolled with it because I thought, this guy is like fucking loaded at the rear with cash. So if he wants to talk business on his flying boat, I mean, go up, all the power to you. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It's very like intimidating. Like, and if this was before the dinner scene where he says, "I'm going to put your balls in your throat and watch you pull your balls out," then I'd be a little skeptical. But the fact that he says that and then goes to the boat, I was kind of prepared for it because this man's willing to do anything.
Was that supposed to be funny? Like when he said that?
I don't think
I wasn't laughing.
I think it was supposed to be intimidating.
Were you laughing or were you intimidated?
I don't think I really laughed like much at all, unfortunately. Like I said, humor didn't really land for me in general. But
what about the guy's body?
What was that?
When when they were dragging the guy's body in the water, did you laugh there?
I did a bit, I guess. It was more like a cringe, like, oh my god, that was a brutal shot. That was like Nolan's like, okay, we need a stunt guy who's willing to do this or something. It looked real, man. Here's a big question that how does the time manipulation even work? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. Give me like the elevator pitch of like how this is supposed to make sense.
You go.
Yeah. Okay. So from my knowledge, there's two parallels. Basically, when you go into one of these inverted machines and you come out the other end, you can see your old self basically like rewinding as you're progressing forwards. But then the version of you progressing forwards is progressing forwards into the past, if that makes sense.
And you can see the person that's going forward can see the other version.
Yeah. So when you don't want to get like close in contact with yourself, like as you're progressing forwards into the past, but then when you invert yourself and come out from the past, then you're progressing forwards through normal time again, but from a previous point in time. So it's a form of time travel through inversion.
Yeah, that's the best way, because this I need multiple viewings. I've tried to not almost listen to their rules and look at it as just time travel. As far as it's fun, the whole like you're inverting, moving backwards, but I just take it as like, okay, they need to go back to a certain point, and to time travel, they gotta literally go through the motion. It's not like an end game where it's like we could just jump from point A to point B. You literally have to walk to point A to point B, and while you're walking, you'll leave traces of yourself that the past will be able to see while you're going forward. So I think where it really that's where, again, at the ending I need to see, because you literally have Robert Pattinson in like 4 different timelines, because he's like in the blue team, he's with John David Washington, and then he's with when he goes back, and then he's with another timeline when he goes back to get himself killed. He's in 4 separate timelines at once, and John David Washington says something like, how is that possible? And he just kind of says like, he says some line about anything being possible. It's like, okay, so it's just like time travel malarkey, but I think Taylor explained it. I vision it that way. He explained it better than I could have. I still don't think they explained it the greatest multiple times.
Yeah, there's particular points that confuse me. Like when that scene where there's kind of like the red and blue glass, and he's kind of Sator's like I don't know, trying to kill a cat or whatever is going on there. Like it was a cool scene in theory, but just because none of it made sense to me, I didn't really like it that much, I guess. But then there was at one point in there where there was like 4 of him, like he had like 4 versions of himself, like all in
Well,
that room.
in that scene, there was just the 2 versions. So when you see Kat get shot by the inverted bullet, that hadn't happened yet. That was her getting shot in the future. So the
Yeah.
present one, he was basically feeding himself information from his future self. So when he was interrogating the protagonist, he was feeding that information back and forth to his future self, um, so that he could go and obviously do what he had to do. It's
Yeah.
very weird.
And so, what's the deal with the mask? Like, are they like breathing in like plutonium or something? Is
It's
that what's
like
making
reverse
them?
oxygen, you could imagine, right? So like everything is reversed. So that includes what you're trying to breathe in. That's how I took it.
Yeah, that's how I took it too,
Huh.
because they gave the explanation about like fire and heat becomes ice, and they said some other things. So that's how I took it, as almost like the air would leave your body if you just don't have this mask. So that's what that's for. That's how I took it.
Okay. And then, so for things that are going in reverse,
Mhm.
uh, is like, how does like if you're going in reverse, but not everything's in reverse? How does that like? There was one point, kind of near the end of the movie when he's like, when protagonist is on some giant like tanker ship, and the thing is like going backwards, and I didn't really understand like, is everything supposed to be going backwards? Is it because there's someone inverted who's controlling that ship? Like, I don't know. I don't get
Well,
that
that's
part either.
because they went through the inversion machine and everything was just naturally going backwards because they were
But not
going to a
everything goes
previous.
backwards, right? Like it's just some things go backwards.
No, I'm pretty sure it's everything in the world, because if you're in the current timeline in the present time, the things that go backwards are like inverted objects that have been brought over from the inversion realm, basically. But that's why they were wearing the masks, because they went into the inverted realm and they were traveling and traversing back to a previous part in time
Mhm.
because that was when they were trying to go and plan accordingly to go and like hit Saito's ship or whatever and like delay him from killing himself and all that. So they had to
Hmm.
go back to that moment because they knew the date. So they had to go back to that moment because they knew he was revisiting that moment before he killed himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that that I'd
I
have to
wish it worked
watch
for
it.
me like it worked for you, because it sounds so simple when you say it, but like it just doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah, like I'd have to watch again and see if everything was. But yeah, that's how I took it, as far as like we got to get to Tuesday, but we're on Friday, so we literally got to live in the inverted world. Like kind of, it's going backwards in a sense. So that's why it's like we got to sleep here. That little tank, obviously, that's what would throw me off sometimes, because lots of times they didn't have the mask off. But clearly, I guess that there's certain areas that they can go into that it's already oxygen for them or put out there. So I think I'm picking up lots of what Taylor's putting down, but I think again I have to see it again. I got that more talking to Taylor and then thinking about it a whole night. Again, in the movie, I
Mhm.
still feel like there's so much going on that's what I said in the non-sports. I feel like I'm thinking about the past scene, but then I'm getting new information in this scene, so it's hard for me really to keep up, because I just think sometimes they just needed some. I think sometimes they just need some cool down moments, you know. And I think that's why I like some of those moments, even though there's exposition in it with Michael Caine and the humor and stuff like that, because it was like, okay, we're not getting so much info, but it felt like every scene was info dump, like just so much of it that I think that's what I will, if I can. I feel like each watch now I need to, like, okay, I'm gonna just specifically focus on the time travel aspect, none of the characters, just watch it for that. And again, I feel like it's not too smooth, but I think Taylor's explained it well. Not like I get the general concept of it. I think.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned like watching it just to ignore like the character's point of view, perspective and just focusing on the time travel part, because that's my goal. I want to rewatch it and I want to hone in on everyone wearing masks and then figure out, okay, so these people are obviously inverted at these points of time, and that leads to other scenarios and such. So I mean, that's my goal for a second watching, because there are a lot of characters that had gas masks in our present timeline.
Mhm. Here's another. I just got tons of questions for you guys.
Yeah.
What was I can't remember her name, the Indian woman who comes up a few times and he like, goes to for information, or like that's like that first big heist thing when they're like zipping up the side of the building, and he ends up talking to her a couple times. What is her like story? Can you
Yes,
give me
she's
a recap
another
of it?
person like Robert Pattinson that he's recruited in the future to help him dish out missions. But then the whole thing with Elizabeth Debicki is she goes against whatever he says. Like, not that he would have said, like, don't kill this woman, but I think she just thought in her mind she was expendable, even though his present day did say, hey, like, you have to promise this woman and the child are going to be safe. And she promises that. So I think once he realizes that he is the protagonist, Robert Pattinson, he realized that he might be, we learned this off screen, but he for sure is the guy giving her info from the future, because they talk about that with Kenneth Branagh's character, that he's getting not only just inverted objects, but just pieces of information from people in the future trying to help him out and help their cause. So I think he's one of those people, but he's on the good side. And she's just kind of like, not a rogue agent, but just kind of in it for herself. So when he found out she was going to do that, he kills her. So I guess at some point in the future, again, he sends word down to a younger version of her to help him out. And then he just knows that, you know, you're like, at one point he's going to have to kill her. It's kind of like the same thing that Robert Pattinson time trial that I like, but it's that thing of like, this is the end of my friendship with you, but it's the beginning of yours. So it's like this whole loop thing where I think eventually you get it on the Charlie Day, you know, Always Sunny map. I think some of it or most of it will make sense, but I think in the film all jumbled, it gets a little confusion, but that's what I took.
Yeah. Can you talk to someone who's inverted? Like, can you have a conversation with someone who's inverted and you're not inverted?
I don't think so. No, I think you'd have to, because was that what they were doing at one point, recording conversation and playing them backwards? Is that what they were doing? That's what I thought a few times, that they had recorded them and played them backwards. I could have been wrong, but there's just multiple recordings happening.
Maybe.
And they do that, and because David Washington and Kenneth Branagh have a conversation, right? But we get that thing where it's like they talk and then it like changes the audio around for them. So maybe you just need a machine like that, like a gateway.
Right.
That's what I think maybe you can, but you couldn't, like, I think if there's no machinery, if you're inverted and the other person's not inverted, you couldn't talk to them, or you couldn't understand them at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering like why we never got a scene where protagonist is like talking to himself, or you have some moment at the end of the movie where he connects with that other version of himself who'd like done all this other stuff in the future, but I guess maybe that hadn't happened yet or something. But there's
they
can't,
right? They like the fact that they fought, I guess, is a whole other scenario. But the rule was like if you get into like super close proximity to yourself, like the particles of your body will like start to like combust or something, and it'll like be very devastating.
Oh, I didn't catch that. So why didn't it happen when he's fighting himself for like 5 minutes straight?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe because it wasn't like skin on skin contact, or he had the mask on or something. Because Aaron Taylor Johnson, when they were walking out into the inverted area with the cat when she was shot, Aaron Taylor Johnson looks at the lady and is like, give him the rundown. She's like, don't come in contact with your former self in this, and yada yada yada, because this will happen.
Yeah, I caught that. I didn't remember the whole like your atoms and whatnot exploding, but I did say I did hear that don't come in contact with yourself. Did John David Washington get stabbed in his arm? Is that why he was bleeding at one point?
Well, it was a bullet wound, right? But I don't know when that connected, because he noticed like his arm started to hurt more, and then he noticed the hole on his jacket, and then it started to bleed. But there was no build-up point to when that happened, when he got shot. The only time I thought that he got shot was, did he shoot himself in the airport scene?
That's what I think.
Because we didn't see a gunshot go off.
We didn't see, not a gunshot, but I thought, maybe was it that time when he did like the rounds on the glass, where it was like the boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
But his old self was in the trajectory of the bullet, right? And the protagonist in inverted form was the one shooting the gunshots. So he wouldn't have been able to hit his arm because he...
Yeah. I think so. I think you're right. My question is, in that scene...
Do you mean the one on the other side of the glass who was running? Is that what you're talking about? Or do you mean like earlier in that scene when they were just like fist fighting, he shot him when they were just in the hallway or something?
Well, he was in both those settings, right? Like when he was like his inverted self was trying to get into that machine, when in reality he was actually going away from it in the current timeline. So he was shooting the gun off, and he went into the inverted machine, and then he went out to their side where Robert Pattinson's character was.
Yeah. So that version of him didn't get shot. It was the non-inverted version from earlier in the movie.
Well, we don't know exactly, because we don't see the non-inverted version actually get shot. It just starts going backwards, because when you're in that scenario, you start to feel the pain of something happening, or you see the crack in the glass because it hasn't happened yet, and then it proceeds to happen. So for the protagonist, his arm started to bruise, and then he saw the bullet hole in his shirt, and then he started to bleed, but it didn't lead to him actually getting shot. So to me, that's an left open plot hole.
My question is, so how that scene originally ended when we first saw it, he got sucked up and went in the airplane turbine, right?
We didn't see him go in the turbine. We just saw him get sucked to the door.
Okay, so maybe that was it. I was trying to wonder if what the deal was that was, or because at one point, this is near the end, and this is because this gets in a whole nother worm, but like Robert Pattinson then starts talking about like multi-universe and multiverse and stuff like that. And that's where it's like, so in one verse, did he actually just die and get sucked to the air? Whatever turbine, but then Pattinson kind of was like, "Oh, we'll go to sleep. We're not going to talk about this." It could just be like unlimited thing, and that's when they're talking about like the grandfather paradox and everything. They touch on some things, but they don't dive too deep in them. I think I'm glad because there's already things that they dive deep enough in that I'm still questioning. But so you think he got sucked up and didn't die?
No, I think that we got to see the other end of that because at that point in time he was inverted and he got sucked out through there, and then it would have been him working with like Robert Pattinson getting the girl rewinding, so that would have been rewinding.
So he was actually just jumping.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to see that point in time. As for him talking about multiple, you need the second watch. As for you talking about the multiple dimension stuff in the grandfather paradox, he says that the fact that the grandfather paradox, it exists in the sense, and that these
people
you
kill your grandfather and still be alive? Yeah, that's what Washington says.
He says the people of the future kind of abide by that, where they don't care. They're treating the future like garbage because they don't think it changes the past, when in reality it does, and that's the cause here, because they're leaving
the other way around. They're treating the past like crap, so because it hurts the future, but it is hurting the future.
Yeah. So again, that segues into them like leaving those packages in behind for Sato or whatever of gold bricks and stuff.
Yeah.
What happens at the start of the movie when he like eats that the bullet thing? I guess that's one of the Horcruxes, right? That little
no, that's like thing. A kill yourself pill.
Cyanide capsule. So I guess I didn't like that because I didn't understand. They said it was a test, but it seems like that mission wasn't a test. Like there was other things like that were really happening in that. I thought what it was going to be is that whole mission was a test, and it was just, okay, this was just to see if he's worthy of being a part of this group. So, okay, this makes sense. But it wasn't, because they say like, oh, so-and-so got away with this brick. So it's like, it was a real mission and you're testing him. So I guess
they rebuilt his jaw, right?
Well, I know, but still, like, why would you be testing someone on a real mission? That doesn't seem like
it's real. So I mean,
But I don't get that then. Like, to me, like, I feel like a task specifically would set up to say, like, should we approve this guy to continue further? Like, in this situation, what happened was he got in that van and there was guys waiting for him and they were his team. But, like, if the mission went, he failed, right? He didn't get the thing they wanted, right, in that mission, or am I wrong?
No,
they're looking for like the plutonium.
Like, civilians died, so from my opinion, they failed.
Oh yeah, especially when they're like, oh, it's just the cheap seats. It's like, yeah, but the whole entire fucking stadium would fall on them. Like they were knocked up. But like either way, like they weren't trying to save people. Their mission was to get those plutonium bricks, right? That's what I thought. Or was I wrong? What was
kind of both? It's kind of like both, right? Because you get the bombs, you save lives.
Okay,
like
so let's say the bombs was one, but then plutonium bricks, that didn't happen. Someone gets away with them, right? Someone we don't know, and we're assuming that's Kenneth Branagh's people. But then the thing is, so that fails, but then his own organization kidnaps him and puts him through like a testing process where they pull his teeth and everything. I don't like, and just to see if he doesn't give information. That's where I was confused.
I guess that part could make sense because the idea of that test was to prove that he wouldn't rat them out or like rat out his other agents on the case, I guess you could say.
So if he was successful and they got the plutonium bricks, would he have been tested? Because I feel like the test was...
He would have, because this is a separate entity altogether.
They still could have kidnapped him, I guess.
Okay. Then I can kind of see that. Then I just found it was because usually most time in all spy thrillers, when there's a test, it's not anything real is happening. So the fact that there was still real stakes like the lives and his lives happening, and then he was being tested upon that, I still don't know how I like that. It does make more sense, so I'll give you that. So maybe I'll feel better about it on a second watch. But then, yeah, he bites the pill. He like died, but I guess they saved him before death, right? They pulled so this is literally out of a James Bond movie where someone bites a cyanide pill and they rebuild his teeth, and that's what they did to him there.
Unless
So,
they just lied, because for all we know, they could have went back in time and pulled him out before
yeah,
he got
true.
killed, right?
Well, I don't know because he said his mouth hurt. Remember, and he's like, "We had to rebuild your
I
teeth."
yeah, maybe I guess maybe the pill wasn't actually a cyanide pill, or like I guess
Yeah.
it was like it's something that just knocked him out. And then because like his friend, the agent that he was with was like the one who had it, or I guess no, he had it originally, and then he lost it, and then his friend grabbed it and gave it
Well, yeah,
back
they
to him.
well no, the Russian guy took it away from him, and he's like playing with them, and then remember he spat it away, and then
Yeah, and
have
then his
it, and
friend
then
grabbed it. Yeah,
yeah, and I guess not the pill. I guess didn't do his teeth. They like physically pulled his teeth out, so which is a
yeah,
brutal test, you know. So
very brutal.
mhm.
Um, the one story beat that I thought was pretty good was at the end um when Kat like goes on the boat, does that whole thing, obviously kicks him off in like that way that we were talking about, and then she jumps off and like sees herself.
The way she slid
To
him.
me that yeah, that was funny. But when she dives off, and then you think back earlier in the movie, she had a line that was like, always wanted to be that girl or something. That was the one point where like everything fit, well, not everything, but that storyline like fit together and clicked for me, and then I felt like that was a satisfied ending. Unfortunately, that was the only one that really had that effect with me, but I think it's worth throwing that out there that I did think that her storyline, probably because it was the most straightforward, to me did make sense and connected, and had a pretty satisfying ending.
Yeah, I love that touch because it's that classic time travel thing of like, oh, she was the girl on the boat the whole time, you know, and then it's
Hmm.
that chicken the egg thing of like, well, if she's not on this boat or she didn't time travel, how this happened. So I liked all that. Yeah, I think she had the most satisfying ending. I think they almost know that because like obviously Washington saves her, but the movie ends on her and her son, right? Like that's the ending point of the movie is
Yeah,
her grabbing her hand and then walking down the street. So I feel like they knew that. I felt conclusion with Pattinson's character. There's still so much mystery, but I thought that as like he is almost just he's just a soldier of war, and his design
yeah,
purposes literally he knows
hired
his
murder.
he knows his day of death, right? And his goal is just you have to literally save the world. I've bought in that more than Washington's because the thing is when Washington has that realization it's going to be after the movie. He still is going to save the world, but like what he's going to go on to do, all this stuff is coming down later on. Technically it's already happened, but with Pattinson's we didn't see everything. But when they did little flashbacks, like I love the acting in his face when he was running down that hall after they did the invert and he takes off the hood and it's Washington's face. I love like just his face of just like kind of horror but complete understanding of what's going on. He wasn't expecting that, but he just throws that mask and just like go. And I loved all that stuff. And I love that that was called back because that was my first sign of okay, something's going on with the scene. One, that fight scene I thought was great of seeing it both ways. At one point when the guy like gives him a judo throw, but when you see it the first time, it's like him doing like a weird flip. I loved all the actual fighting of the like the inverted versus the averted, and then seeing both versions. It reminded me a lot of the Joseph Gordon-Levitt like hallway scene. So I liked all that.
Mhm.
And then I liked too that when he passed and did run after him and he pulled that mask off, they cut away. I am glad that that was a callback because that was my first sign of like, okay, something's wrong here with this character. Something's out with this character because back in my mind, I was worried that they just didn't show what happened to that character, and he just like took him out, and that was it. So I liked like that was a very classic like Prestige, Interception, and Nolan as far as just like he laid like the little breadcrumbs, and that's where I feel like it's a lot like Interception that way, where it's just like all that's there. The only one breadcrumb I didn't like was I felt like at the very end when they're getting the last like bricks and they're trying to stop the explosion, there's that dead guy, and then like zoom in on that backpack. I hated that because right away when they zoomed in, I knew like, oh, that's Pattison. Even though we hadn't seen Pattison's backpack yet, I feel like they should have done that. Like, I don't know how, but they should have done him seeing the actual backpack of the dead body, maybe even a little further than that revealed. To me, it just felt, even in a Nolan sense, it didn't even feel like it was, they showed the backpack and you could catch it. It was, I feel like they should have showed the backpack from a bit of a wider shot. And then when they did the soft flashback, go back to scene, but then close in on it, where when it was just a
Mhm.
full on close up of this little charm, you knew it was going to be Pattinson. They showed the dead body, but they wouldn't show its face. He had hair like Pattinson. So I loved the resolution of Pattinson's character, giving him the whole talk, but the impact of like that shock of it being Pattinson, the dead guy, it didn't have that shock because the second they showed that, it just felt very obvious to me and like a very unknown in a way. I feel like he's usually better at hiding that sort of stuff. So that was a con I had with some of that
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I didn't even really pick up on that. I think I was just like throughout that whole scene, I was like, what's going on here? That when it got to that point, I guess I didn't even like consciously realize it. I'll show to another action scene. I didn't actually like the one where he's fighting his inverted self so much. Just looked kind of weird for me. But what I did really like was earlier in the movie when he's in the kitchen and then he has like the goons coming after him. I thought that was a really fun fight scene. I thought it was like super visceral when he like takes the cheese grater and like rubs it across the guy's face. That made me cringe in like the best way possible. So I like that action scene. And other than that, I like the bigger, more set piece ones. But the hand-to-hand combat with inverted versions didn't work so much for me.
One thing I want to point out, you guys are talking about how like you like Cat's ending and all that kind of stuff. The interesting thing for when you think about this as a whole is, so the variant of Sador that they killed, he was the one from the future. And he went back. So technically,
and I love that reveal that he went back to hang out with his wife, who was just trying to have a good date. And then, like, it's that fun thing of like he's from the future, he thinks she's from the past, but then when she does reveal she's from the future or she's the current time, I really liked that reveal. I really like that a lot.
That whole sequence, like basically the whole film is doomed to loop again and again and again, which I like. I like how that happens because like the real Sato comes back or whatever, because that was obviously the one from the future that died, and obviously then you learn now that the protagonist goes off to recruit Robert Pattinson, and then something happens to the protagonist, and then it just loops back around to Robert Pattinson recruiting the protagonist. So it's just this unending cycle that I think is I like that in time travel movies when you can kind of like map it out again and again, because it's
so
terrifying.
Just all time travel
it's
movies.
Purgatory.
Yeah, they always have that. Like, well, if you didn't go, and that's why it's always like. I did like the conversation, at least the multiverse, because there has to be some multiverse where someone didn't go back in time and everything just ended, right? Because that's like, who was that original Liz Debicki on the boat, you know? Because she sees she's on a separate boat and then she sees another woman jumping off the boat. There has to be one version of Elizabeth Debicki that does not see that version of her jumping off the boat, right? You would have to think, but then...
Well, I mean, everything will change there because when she gets onto the boat, what's his face won't be there. So
yeah,
that's where the
but that
is, right?
version of her not seeing herself jump off, that doesn't exist, because at the moment you go back in time, you create that ripple where it just has to a continuous
but
cycle.
at some point it had to exist, right? Because before, like, what about the very
Depends
first
how many
person?
like alternate versions there is, I guess.
Well, because it's like the very first person, like the prime timeline when they're going and they haven't met time travel yet, they wouldn't see that person on the boat, right?
They wouldn't have, but there's still always that future version that created time travel and would have gone back to that first
I believe
time.
that. Yeah, I'm just saying that prime one, she would go back, and the second or third one would see herself. But I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go too deep in though, because that's like every time travel, like mumbo jumbo. So
Mumbo jumbo. What else you guys got topic wise?
Taylor.
One of my favorite things, and I couldn't fathom it when I was watching it, is I love that, okay, red team was going in and they were in the regular timeline going countdown 10 minutes. And then you had blue team that went in, which was basically negative 10 minutes counting up. And I really, really liked the fact that they both converged at the same time. And that sequence where the building was just basically inverting back up. And then their red team's rocket took out the top and blue team's rocket, or both rockets hit the top, but the explosion took out the base. Like, it was just so
I was so confused.
Visually cool.
It was visually cool. That's the thing. I think the stuff is really visual cool, but I was like, that's where I need a graph, because there's like 3 separate explosions. I was like, okay, what's going on here? Why do they need to repair this building? Because even like getting shot, for me, sometimes it's weird. Like, I know they're seeing in reverse, but sometimes you'll get shot and then honestly there's no bullet, but you still have the effects. So it's still just like, there's sometimes where I think it worked very well. And that building one, it might work very well mechanically, but I was like, it's like, I'm lost. I don't know what's happening.
Well, it seems like such a crazy terrain that you're traversing, because you have to watch out for regular bullets coming your way, but then the inverted settings as well. Like, for the protagonist, as he was running, a piece of concrete off the ground flipped up and like flipped him around.
That was
like,
fun. Or
it's
like
so crazy.
One of Pattinson's people he was with was like shooting from a foxhole that was blown up, but they didn't know that the bricks were going to come back, so it just came up and swallowed them. Also, much like Inception, I don't know if it would make much sense, but I'd love a video game like that where it's just, I liked it all visually. I just my slow brain needs a second watch for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What
Me
about
too.
that? Yeah. Any other things? Because I think I've touched on almost everything. I'm trying to think of any cons last night that I had that I couldn't have said spoiler wise, because most of my pros, like, visually was I found stunning. Like I said last night, it's just, even if this movie's on mute, just like the cinematography and action, I really enjoy the visuals and stuff. The very little use of CGI. Obviously, there's a lot of it on like the inverted stuff, but still, I liked all that. I love the soundtrack. And like I said, I don't think there's anything spoilers that I like I said, yeah, I'm surprised because all that humor worked for me for the majority of just like that one point we're passing had all the guys with their guns. He's like, you better eat, it's gonna get cold. It all worked for me. I got me. So
I'm with you on that. Like, I like a lot of the humor. I liked when even at the dinner setting when the protagonist sits down and the Saito looks at him and is like, "Did you sleep with my wife?" He's like, "No, not yet." And then he goes and he kisses her as he walks out. Like, he's just sticking it to him, and all that stuff I enjoyed. And the more I've talked about it, the more I really I do like the protagonist. I like Robert Pattinson a lot in this movie. I really, really loved him in this film. I always said, like, for me, if he could like land the role in The Lighthouse, then I can see him as Batman, and I stand by that because to me, I saw him as Batman way before seeing this movie. So, but I'm
even though that one scene where he walked out, he had like when he was going to the bank vault. I feel like Warner Brothers saw that and was like, okay, he can have an audition for Batman because he was all suited up and he had like the slick back hair. I doubt you have, Dylan, but have you seen the Batman trailer, Dylan?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Ooh.
Oh, we gotta get you when you're in Kelowna. We're gonna pull you aside. You're gonna watch it with us.
We're gonna strap you to a chair.
But what about you, Dylan? Anything else you haven't shout out?
I did kind of touch on it, but I did really like the music as well. There was like obviously it's a lot of that same like Hans Zimmer stuff, even though it's not Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
But there's a couple cool parts. Like there's just a character like walking by just like a gate fence. And as the camera's like zooming past this fence, you kind of see each picket like zooming by, and like the music was perfectly timed with like each picket. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was really
I
cool.
think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of happened like a couple times, I think. But yeah, like the special effects were great. I really did like Robert Pattinson. He was my favorite character as well. Even if I didn't fully understand what was going on with him, I still thought he was a lot of fun.
Well, I think he was good because he was a lot of fun, but there is portions in the movie where, especially when Washington's questioning him, I never, like, because Emily said she thought he might be bad. I never got that, but you always got this sense of this guy is not telling us everything. And he just seemed like he could switch between being that comedic beat to also just untrustworthy, not slimy, but just you need to keep your eye on him. He's like a chameleon where I didn't know at one point where he was going because he was acting very solemn and he's giving him this exposition. Oh, you can't hear me.
Oh, we're back.
Am I back? Maybe
I have no idea what
my
you
finger
said for
just
10 seconds there, but
oh, my finger maybe it just slipped on the mute thing. But all I said was that I just like that he went back and forth between feeling untrustworthy but then friendly right away, and it was just you could never put a finger on him. But like I said, I never felt like he was bad. I felt he was just I always keep my eye on him. Like when he called him the Cavalry too. It's like even when you're like, who's the Cavalry? Like I think that mystery worked of like every 15 minutes there's something new about him, and that's what really made me intrigued about him. He's somebody that I don't want it, but if there was like here's a prequel comic book of like 22 pages about his character, he's the one I'd want that of just to see like, okay, how did he get recruited? What was his life before, so
yeah, for sure.
Anything else or
gosh, just
this is a tough one to not do that. Even if we did this a week later without seeing a second time, like I think I've hit everything on my mind, but I know I know even like when we did Inception, there's questions, and that was 10 years later. And I think this is going to be one of those movies, if someone were to do retrospective 10 years later, you're going to have questions about it. So that's why Inception, I always had questions about the first time, but I think I'm much more like Dylan, where I thought it was streamlined a lot better, and I got the majority of this, where this feels like I have questions, and there's lots of stuff that I still need some explaining on.
Yeah, there's a few things like, I don't feel like it's too difficult like upon like a second and third watch to kind of like click with it, because I feel like I've been able to piece things together with how this is like it goes on, and talking about it has really kind of opened up like certain doors to understanding it. There is a lot of still loose ends that I feel like that's in the film, but I need to revisit that when I watch it again.
Because I was saying that to you last night, like we don't know if those are purposeful loose ends, we didn't get loose ends, or they are just sometimes plot holes. Because we talk about Inception, where this could just be a plot hole, right? They say something and maybe a scene kind of contradicts that, and they just kind of go, "Oh, well, it's a dream world," and you go, "Okay, like I guess so." And maybe I feel there's a lot of those moments where they just like, "Well, people are inverted," and it's like, I guess we don't know the full rules of that, so you can say, "Oh, inversion."
I originally thought that the leading into the story that, okay, they're talking about inverted objects, so obviously these vehicles are inverted and they're just, that's how things are going. But now it makes much more sense that it's just, yeah, it's not the items that are necessarily inverted. I mean, those items are, but it's the fact that they've gone through the inverted machine and are
or a person
things.
has to invert them, right? Because when they get in, they said the car won't move forward. Because like that car that he drove, that wasn't inverted, was it? Or was it?
No, because the car that when he went, he was driving that against the forces, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why in our
Right,
timeline we
right.
see it driving all
I
funky.
see what you mean. Yeah.
So, but again, like I do like this movie, and after talking about it, I feel confident that I want to say it's like 8 out of 10 for me.
Oh, it's gone up. Look at that.
Yeah, it has gone up. I knew it would. I just had to like vent it out and like share and discuss with you guys.
Yeah, for like the people that if they didn't check the non-sports, I gave it a 9. That for me is like I don't think it'll ever go up to 0.5. I think the only way it could go is potentially down, but maybe it could go up a little. But for me, because I gave Interstellar a 9, because I had problems with it, but it was just, I still just like the pure film, like on screen is just the stuff I love. And I could watch this, and I would, if I had to pick, I would rather watch this over Interstellar or Dunkirk because I like this type of style. Even the stuff that, if it didn't make sense, I like the Bond globetrotting. I like some of the jokes. I like the action. So for me, there's enough that I would watch this again over. Even if I'm fucking hella confused, I would watch it again. So Dylan, what were your final thoughts on Tenet? We finally saw it.
We finally did. Yeah, I think it's weird going into this movie, right? Because I just didn't know even a week ago if I would really actually be seeing it. Even when I had my ticket on Adam, I didn't know if that would mean I'd be there watching it. So my expectations were in a weird spot because I feel like they were kind of low, but at the same time, I haven't seen anything in theater since Birds of Prey. So my expectations were quite high, or like I just wanted like a really sweet movie to watch and just one that I would love from start to finish, and that unfortunately wasn't the case. But yeah, when it comes to Netflix, I'll watch it again. I'll watch it with a pen and paper. That'll maybe help me
And
chart
subtitles.
some of it out. Yeah, exactly. Subtitles, absolutely, for
Yeah.
sure. To
Whole
help
new
me figure
experience
it
with
all
the
out.
subtitles.
I definitely need more watches with it, but unfortunately, as of one watch, I can't say that I'm a too big of a fan. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see when we get to the ranking part, like what kind of characters or scenes might make it into there. But for now, not my favorite. If you're a Nolan fan, check it out. But maybe you don't need to run to the theater right now, and that's probably a good thing to do in the long run anyway.
You got to
so.
invert yourself and go backwards to the theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the
Make
old
sure you bring the
August
oxygen tank with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Taylor, where can they find us?
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you can find us in the search bar with your internet connection, Geekverse Podcast, anywhere on the web. Find us on Facebook, Geekverse. Find us on Twitter, GeekverseCast, and on our website, geekverse.ca. And check us out on Patreon. A lot of good stuff popping up with them over there.
Yeah, we did the entire Nolan Retro. Obviously, that's out now, but there's other good goodies up there you get early. We'll be doing some stuff in the future. Now that we got the Nolan Retro, we're still going to do the Nolan ranking. I mean, I talked to Kirklin and find out when he's seeing Tenet, if he's seeing it in the near future. If so, we'll wait for him. If not, we'll drop that in the near future. And then next, it's weird, but we're going to do the Dark Knight trilogy as commentary tracks. So those will be Patreon exclusive for a while. So there's going to be tons of stuff up there. No inversion.
We got Mulan and the boys next weekend, right? We're trying for that.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff coming out. So we promise you, when that all drops, it'll not be boring.
Peace.